Beneath the city of New York are living catacombs, an endless maze of subterranean tunnels, unfit for anything human, unauthorized for anything experimental.
Hold it! There's something moving up ahead at the top!
And unlikely to bring anyone down there. So, they're coming up. C.H.U.D. C.H.U.D. Check your basement and your bathroom. Keep off the street and try to hide. But remember, the dark is their place. The night is their time. And tomorrow, the only things living in the city of New York will be C.H.U.D. C.H.U.D. Cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwellers. C.H.U.D. They're not staying down there anymore.
Welcome to They Call This a Movie, testing the strength of friendships, one terrible movie at a time. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and other podcast services by searching They Call This a Movie, and find us on Twitter and Instagram at TicTamPod. That's TCTAM Pod. Welcome back to They Call This a Movie. This is Anthony Delvecchio, and with me as always is Dan Aquino and Mark Myers. Say hello, gentlemen.
Hey, friends.
Hello. No real funny bit this week. Just when this episode airs, we'll be in New York, and I am so excited for Comic-Con. I don't know about you guys. I've been thinking about it most of the week.
I'm dreading it, to be honest. I hate going to Comic-Con.
Yeah.
Oh, I like seeing you guys. What?
I've only been doing it for like 12 years. It's the worst.
Tear.
Now, obviously, I'm excited.
I'm indifferent.
Yeah.
You lying sack of shit.
Dan, Mark, I'm surprised you're excited because there's art there.
Well, they coordinated off like it should be.
Like its own ghetto.
Yeah. Gets its own place.
Gotcha.
Where it knows to stay.
Sure. All right. Yeah. That's where we probably are when you're listening to this podcast, if you listen to the first week. Otherwise, if you're not, then this is completely dated and none of this means anything to you or us. But this is the beginning of October, which means we are talking horror movies all month long. And this week is no different. And this week, I believe, was Dan's pick. And if you're listening to us and you're listening to me talk about this already, then you'll notice we are not talking about what we watched this week, because that segment is dead. Mark killed it and pissed on the ashes.
Finally. I was quiet quitting the segment.
Yeah.
You did a good job with it, I'll tell you that much. I was lamenting that, Mark, that you ruined it. Well, you didn't ruin it. No. I was lamenting that because this is really the month where the segment should still be around, if you think about it.
Yes, we're both you and I are going to be watching a lot of movies this month.
Yeah, I've already watched probably a good 12 to 15 movies.
I have not done that many, but I've started things. But we can't talk about that because we can't talk about it.
Right, legally, we can no longer talk about it. We can't name one movie that we watched.
Yeah, yep. I mean, and the fans will never hear the 5 movies I watched this week. So.
Man, it's and I was because I was watching this one movie last night, and I just like I would love to talk about this on the podcast, but it's done. We're leaving it behind us.
Yep, and it's going to take a while for us to get used to it, but we will. But we did watch one movie this week, and that's the movie we're talking about this week, and it was Dan's pick. So Dan, why don't you tell us what movie you picked?
I would be more than happy to, sir. So for this week, to kick off our Halloween horror-a-thon, I guess, I wanted to originally watch The Stuff, which is, super campy B movie. Love it to death. But we had already covered that in a previous iteration of this podcast. Right, Ant?
Yeah, probably about 9 years ago.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you could find it and you want to listen to what we think of The Stuff, it's somewhere in the ether, I'd imagine, right? Someone could find it, I bet. And just
maybe
there's probably some hacker out there who has it. They just
Right.
they have they have our recording of The Stuff in like the nuclear codes.
Now I'm curious. I might try and find this now because I don't remember who hosted it at that time.
Yeah, that's a good point. But now I'm picturing in my head some like really weird shut off random person who has the launch codes, but also just listens to our review of The Stuff, and that's what kind of holds them over from not destroying us all. So in a way, we're heroes, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I always see ourselves that way.
Yeah, it's good to look at ourselves in a good light.
Yeah, stay humble.
Yeah. So I nixed The Stuff, and I decided to go with 1984's classic C.H.U.D.
Okay. And where are you coming from with C.H.U.D there, Dan?
So Anthony, you'll probably know this. Mark, you might not know this, but you'll probably guess where I'm going with it. The first time I had ever heard of C.H.U.D was from the season 9, episode 1 Simpsons episode, the City of New York versus Homer Simpson. That, and again, there's just a throwaway line. Homer is he takes one trip to New York and he has a horrible experience there. He gets chased around by a pimp and robbed, and he falls into a sewer, and it flashes back to present time, and he said, that's when the chuds got me. So I was very young at the time. I didn't know what C.H.U.D was, but I laughed anyway, because again, you're young and it sounded funny. But then I found out that C.H.U.D was a real movie, and the first time I had ever watched C.H.U.D was at Anthony's house. We watched it together, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And I remembered, I haven't seen the movie since, and I thought to myself, this is on pretty much every streaming option that you have out there. They're begging people to watch C.H.U.D apparently. And it was my next best pick because I was flipping through and I saw, let's do C.H.U.D, and I'm very happy that we did, because this movie is everything that I would want in an 80s B movie.
Mark, what about you? Where are you coming from with C.H.U.D?
Yeah, so I had heard of it before, probably through you guys talking about it or seeing it through a streaming thing. Never watched it myself. And it seems to be one of those movies, as soon as I mention it, my entire coworkers that talk about the podcast with me lit up and were excited. So I knew I was in for a good movie. In the sense that this is the type of horror, and if you've listened to us long enough, the type of horror movies that I can get into, these late 70s, early to mid 80s movies where there's not much like weirdness or psychological horror to it. It's very straightforward. It's a monster that's killing people, and it's got every mixture of great cheesiness with cops demanding the truth. I need the truth. And then you have Daniel Stern playing the streetwise guy that knows what he's talking about. Is going to yell at authority and get his way. But in the era without cell phones, it's probably not wise. But yeah, this movie was fun. I had a good time watching it. It moved along well enough that it never really, got too bogged down or boring. And that's usually the one thing that holds some of these movies back from this time frame, is that they don't know exactly when to move the plot along. But this one seemed to run at a pretty good clip and had made me do an oh shit moment in it when I connected the dots, because I was going to make fun of the part where they randomly find the captain's wife dead, and then he explains, why she would be out at night. I was like, oh, she was the girl from the Law and Order opening at the beginning. So yeah, lots of fun. I'm glad that Dan picked it, because it gives me a new movie to put on the list instead of the stuff which we've already seen.
Okay. I can't find this podcast episode anywhere. Man.
Oh, that's a shame.
So for me, yes, I've seen it. I had it at one point. I owned it on DVD, and that was like a blind buy. It came in like a packaging of like cult classics, along with, I think I also bought Return of the Killer Tomatoes with it, with George Clooney. And yeah, Chud's fun. Chud is often considered like a really bad movie, but this is just a good old time. There's plenty of movies just like this in the 80s. For some reason, I must misremember, and maybe it was on my copy of the DVD. And Dan, if you watched it with me, maybe you remember. I feel like there was a different ending, or like an additional ending.
There's a director's cut according to the trivia, because that's where the only nudity is.
Yeah, from what I remember, and I could just be making this up because I haven't seen Chud in a while, probably since I watched it on that DVD. But I almost feel like there's a scene where they go back to the apartment and then a Chud breaks in again. But I must be wrong. I must be thinking of something else.
I think there had to have been a different ending, because this one, the theatrical cut, I'll say, it ends. Excuse me. The theatrical one that we watched, it ends on such an abrupt note.
Yeah.
Right? It's just like, this thing happens. We're not really shown if there's an effect to what happens, and it just ends. I didn't want to, like, I guess, give away too much at the ending, but does it matter?
It doesn't. So basically what happens at the end is that they start pumping the sewers with gas. A car accident, we'll call it, with the van, as it the manhole covers open, it falls into it, and a spark ignites the entire sewer system and it blows up. Now, we don't really see many Chuds before that, and we don't see where there's no resolution to, oh, yep, they're all dead in there. And,
right.
Just, all right, everybody go home. So it is a weird, like, just, all right, that Wilson's dead. That's that problem is over. Good night, everybody. And roll credits. So it is weird, but yeah, for some reason I have this in my head, and I thought it was going to end this way. It was that they go back to the apartment, and then like a Chud just walks through the door.
That's what it was missing. The ending definitely needed that last, jump scare. Like it needed that Jason coming out of the Camp Crystal Lake.
Mm-hmm.
It could, because again, it just, you fade to black on a fiery explosion. We don't see anyone dead, like you said. So maybe, I would have to watch the DVD version, I guess. Maybe this one was cut for time, or like Mark said, it's the director's cut.
Yeah. I don't have this uncut Anchor Bay release that wasn't the DVD. So I don't know.
There's also they omitted a line in the uncut release where when the man in the telephone booth is killed, there's someone on the other end saying, "Jesus, Fred, what have you been eating? Mexican food again?" Probably should have left that in there.
That's gold. I don't know why they took it out.
Yeah, I think that really, you're depriving us of a strong character development. Because now we know Fred enjoys Mexican food.
Yeah. The only real problem I had with you were mentioning the ending was that they, talk about putting natural gas into the sewer line, and they have a big explosion above a manhole cover. Yet the rest of the neighborhood does not blow up, as the entire sewer system should engulf in flame.
Now that's the thing. They don't show anything happen underground. So we just see what happens in that one manhole cover. Figured they would show like all of the Chud dead, but there's nothing. It's just, you're supposed to assume it, I guess.
No, I guess the explosion is to like make you think, oh yeah, have you fill in the blanks, fire, kill everything, yeah. But they could have just solved the same problem with if the wheel falls in the hole, it makes it hard for the Chuds to get out, and then they would still die anyway.
Right.
But yeah, the explosion just added a whole new thread in there that did not need to be added in for people that think a little critically, while watching these movies.
It had to have been a monetary issue.
Yeah.
Right. We can't afford to shoot an entire set piece on fire, essentially. Like, we can't throw flames in here and make it look as if the whole system is engulfed in flames.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like this movie. It was way better than I remembered it being. And it's always been a joke. People will crack fun at C.H.U.D if they know what it is. But I mean, it tells a very compelling story in a way I was not expecting, and it does a good job of being a cannibalistic humanoid underground dwelling story.
Yep. No, I definitely. And it's good to see John Hurt and Daniel Stern team up before Home Alone and Home Alone 2.
Now, I would love to have known, because I know John Hurt passed away, but Daniel Stern is still kicking around.
Yep.
I wonder if there was like before Home Alone was shot, I wonder if they had John Hurt. I know a guy who can be in the movie.
Yeah, I don't know. That'd be good to.
Or if John Hughes saw C.H.U.D.
Yeah.
I hope John Hughes saw C.H.U.D and said, "These are my guys."
Yeah.
I don't want them to share any scenes because they have terrible chemistry. But
that's a good point. That was something I noted. I think my one nitpick is there's maybe too many characters in it.
There are a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you have John Hurt, Daniel Stern, John Hurt's girlfriend, you have the cop, you have the who else? The reporter.
You have the reporter, then
the corrupt NRC guy.
Yeah, and his cronies, like that one dude that locks the basement,
right?
Or locks the sewer.
Which his whole thing is just wearing a Lacoste polo shirt.
Yeah, and sunglasses. Then Sam McMurray pops up.
Yeah, so there's too many people, I think.
Yeah. Then you get the commissioner, the chief of police, who are ineffectual. Like, this NRC guy is just running the town.
Yeah, how would he just come in and start bossing the mayor around? Right? I feel like that's not the chain of command there.
Yeah.
Very. I think Daniel Stern and John Hurt don't meet until the third act. And it's a very odd choice to get those two together when they've shared no scenes prior.
Yeah, and it's weird that they haven't met each other because John Hurt spends so much time photographing homeless people, and
that's a good point.
The Reverend runs a soup kitchen, and they just have a passing comment. It's like, "Oh, don't I know you?" It's like, "Yeah, I run the soup kitchen." Like, "Oh yeah."
That's right. That's the first thing they say to each other, pretty much.
Yeah, like you would think that they'd have like they would know each other.
Yeah.
Yep, that scene passes the Mark test. Just have at least one line in there where two characters that should know each other, or something that should be known by the characters is acknowledged.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have a hot take here, or maybe an unpopular opinion.
Uh-oh.
And
Get
you guys
ready for that cancel button.
Well, I'd hope it's not that bad, but you guys can disagree with me. I would probably eliminate the girlfriend from this movie, or not give her as much screen time.
Okay.
And the reason why, who played Kim Grease. I would not give her character as much screen time because they don't give her anything to do in the movie.
Sure.
So I'm not saying she's not a good actress, because she's good in this movie. But it just they only have her to be kind of like the damsel in distress in the third act.
Yeah, she doesn't do much. She says she's pregnant, and that's about it.
And that doesn't play anything into the story.
No, they mostly forget about it.
Yeah. So, what if at the end, like we know she's pregnant, she's like 9 months pregnant, she's ready to burst when this is about to happen.
Are you going to say a fly ending?
She gives birth to a C.H.U.D.
Oh, I love it.
Right? Oh, come on.
There's that whole scene. Because the whole scene when she chops off the head, it like looks like it bites her.
Yes. Perfect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, C.H.U.D 2 is called Bud the C.H.U.D. Maybe
they
did that.
Maybe if her baby is Bud.
Yeah, I don't know. I just saw that was the title, and I'm assuming it's going to be focusing on a chud.
That's a odd choice. Now, so the Chud are the homeless people living underground, correct?
Yes, the people that
Right.
went missing underground.
I like how cavalier. I know it's set in the '80s, New York, but just how cavalier everyone is with people living in the subway or in the sewer.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's no sense of urgency or like that's strange. It's like, all right, well, yeah, I got like 12 people who come up from underground and they hang out. They hang out in here, and it's like total normal conversation. Like, oh, 12, that's it.
Well, it's tough up there.
It's a scary world up there. I 100% agree. But again, I feel as this movie was probably Rudy Giuliani's wet dream, just getting rid of all the homeless.
Yeah.
Like,
He's like,
why
man,
can't
I'd
we-"
kill for a chuds.
Right. And I was hoping that there would be a little bit more of a concern that so many people were living underneath the city.
Yeah. So what you're saying, Dan, is that we shouldn't show this to Eric Adams?
No, I would advise against it. But yeah, I did love the gritty, grimy aesthetic of 1980s New York that they have, and like the hopelessness that was going on at that time.
Mhm.
It's a perfect backdrop to this kind of movie.
Yeah.
And like the movie opens up with a woman being dragged into the sewer, so it doesn't waste any time getting its chud on.
Mhm.
And then you see these homeless people just kind of shuffling around. Like, yeah, man, that was New York at the time, and it's a good allegory, I guess, or just like a good message. Like these people are like literally forgotten about, and who knows what could be happening to them down there.
Yeah. Yeah, there definitely seems to be some sort of message about how disposable and forgotten about the homeless population in New York City was at that moment. I don't know what it means. I don't know what the but yeah, it's definitely there, and obviously the environmental aspect of it as well.
Yeah, it's a good point. I thought I don't know if you needed the NRC guy. What's his name? Wilson.
Wilson.
Yeah, I don't know if he really needed him in this. Right? Why not just make the Chud the bad guys?
Yeah, I guess you need a antagonist. I guess you need a reason for this stuff to happen, I suppose.
Okay.
Yeah. I think he needs to be the guy that's like, yeah, this is the guy that's done all this, stuff like that.
I thought it would make more sense if Wilson was the mayor. Like the mayor is okaying all of this, not some person from a different organization.
Yeah, I guess if you could kind of streamline that in terms of the reason why he's getting all this pull. Yeah,
Right.
well, he's the mayor, of course. Of course, he's
Right.
gonna, make a thing that's like, well, the city's city's broke, and they needed, and this company was paying the city billions of dollars to dump toxic waste into the sewer system. Have that kind of storyline.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good and very believable. Who knows what the government is doing underneath your feet? They could be pumping anything in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's good, and because I also didn't like the one plot where like Wilson is basically the mayor from Jaws. Like, oh, we got the one Chud. How many could there possibly be under there? And we'll handle it ourselves.
Yeah.
I think I was hoping it would be one of those things where they find the Chud. Now they're going to try to strategize from the get go and not just be like, we're done with this. This is whatever. Or I'm not gonna let you post anything about this. Or I think it would have been, like you said, maybe a little bit more streamlined, a little cleaner to me. If all right, we found this Chud. Now it's like, all right, now our best and our brightest are going to get in on it, but they're stupid, and it takes Daniel Stern and the police captain and John Hurd to get this shit sorted out.
Sure. So, C.H.U.D from 1984 is directed by Douglas Cheek, and he doesn't have a whole lot of things to his name. He is a documentary editor by trade, not even a director, an editor. It stars John Hurd, Daniel Stern, Christopher Curry, Kim Greist, Brenda Curran, Michael O'Hare, Eddie Jones, Sam McMurray, George Martin, Frankie Faison, John Goodman, and Jay Thomas. IMDb score of 5.6 and a Rotten Tomato score of 29%. Budget $1.25 million. Box office 4.6. Lot of people you've known in this movie. Sam McMurray we mentioned. Frankie Faison showed up in a whole bunch of things. And person I didn't mention, John Polito plays the news anchor at the end. You know him from a bunch of stuff. Doesn't look like what you know him as. He played the super in Seinfeld, the Russian guy that Kramer was sleeping with his wife. I don't know if you remember.
I don't remember that.
It's fine. I just have an encyclopedic knowledge about Seinfeld.
You do. It's been a long time since I've watched Seinfeld. I'm at that point where I only know the hits.
Gotcha. But that's C.H.U.D. Yeah, we like it. It's probably one of, there's a bunch of these kind of like creatures from the sewers or like gritty New York movies that kind of go into these things just want to rape women, sort of like in Seminoid. So it's refreshing that C.H.U.D doesn't go across that line. Not enough C.H.U.Ds in this movie, though, I will say. I need more C.H.U.Ds.
I think there's only maybe four or five C.H.U.D. Yeah.
Like, I need a bunch of them chasing Daniel Stern and John Hurt in the sewer. Like, a bunch more.
Yeah, not just one or two.
Right.
Yeah. I like how this is a very... It's a B movie, obviously. It's definitely... It has camp elements to it. But it tells a compelling story. There's an actual story in this movie. And, obviously where a lot of B movies fall flat is there's no real story going on. I'm not going to say the acting is great in this movie. It's competent. I wasn't taken out of the movie because of the acting. And it's actually not a poorly shot movie, right? It has some, decent camera work in it for what it is.
Stretches that $1.25 million budget pretty well. Because I'm assuming that's all sets. I'm assuming they didn't go down to the sewers to shoot. So
yeah. And there's some decent, there's some decent gore effects. Couple heads get cut off, right? Mm-hmm. Some bloody appendages. You can definitely tell some of the props. Like the guy with the severed head with the earphones on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but that was very fake looking. But yeah, not bad, decent. Again, very passable. It's a passable movie.
Yeah, it's a good time. You guys want to get into the plot?
Let's do it.
All right, Dan, what do you got for us?
All right, so I just want to give a quick shout out to our very good friends Tia and Brittany. And I would like for you guys out there to check out their podcast, the Top 10 with Tia. It's a weekly podcast. Tia and Brittany just talk about top 10 lists, whatever the subject is of the week. So if that's something that you like, please go over to geekvibesnation.com and search the Top 10 with Tia and give it a listen.
Okay, great. And we are going to take a quick break, and you guys are going to listen to messages from friends of the podcast. So we will be right back.
Hey, this is Ken M.
Padawan J.
Coach Duffy. From the Ocho Duro Parlay Hour podcast. Every week, the ODPH is talking sports, movies, TV, comics, and more. It's always a parlay of topics on each episode. You can find the ODPH on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, and wherever you find great podcasts, such as the one you're listening to right now. Don't forget to check out OchoDuroParlayHour.com, where you can find the links to all of the ODPH social media accounts, links to the bands whose music you hear each week on the show, hashtag 607 podcast info, and parlay points, our companion blog section of the show. Thanks for listening to the ODPH. Now get back to your regularly scheduled podcast.
Welcome, travelers. Seems like you're looking for a story. Well, I got one for you. It involves adventure, friendship, and all sorts of...
Earl, why don't you tell him about that time I stole that big-ass melon?
Yeah, I was going for more...
Or you could tell him about the time I kicked your ass, Earl.
I wouldn't ever tell them.
Do I need to get my ref gear on?
Okay, everyone, shut up. Now come with me as I tell you a story from afar. Hey everybody, my name's David. I'm the DM for From Afar Podcast. From Afar Podcast is all about four friends separated by distance, but brought together by adventure. Hope you all stop by and give us a listen. Thanks.
And welcome back. Now it's time to get into the plot for C.H.U.D. We open on a woman walking her dog down the street late at night in New York City. She gets close to a manhole cover, a hand comes out of the ground and pulls her and the dog alone with her. just as fast as it popped up, it's back down in the sewer, leaving only the woman's shoe.
I don't know about you guys. I mentioned this earlier, but this really felt like a Law and Order opening, and like just the woman's there, she's gone. You don't know. This guy comes around the corner, and he's going to be the key to the whole mystery.
Yeah, it's like a cold open. I get it.
Yeah.
In the morning, the shoe gets swept away by a street sweeper as a couple of homeless people go about their morning. From his apartment window, John heard as George takes pictures of the street scene. Gets a phone call from Derek, who is a copywriter or something, which he lets go to voicemail. Derek wants him to shoot pictures for an article, but George just doesn't feel inspired by the subjects that are presenting themselves, so he's just kind of stringing Derek along. George is a photographer with a live-in model girlfriend, Lauren, who has convinced George to shoot a perfume ad that she's going to be in. As Lauren goes down to the basement to grab a box of her things, she meets the landlady, who doesn't really make any effect in this movie. But we find out that George and Lauren are subletting the apartment from her friend, which also doesn't come up. The landlady later goes to throw out some trash, and she's startled as something jumps out from the trash in the alley, leaving an open manhole cover in its wake, which also doesn't come back. There's no chuds hanging around, running around above ground in this movie.
I forgot all about that thread.
Well, is that, I think a chud basically takes a homeless person, because isn't there like a spot of blood or like a pool of blood there?
So rather than jump out, it pulls in?
Yeah, that's the chud's MO.
Yeah, I thought it was the other way around.
I mean, it could have been that they jumped out to bring them back in, but I think, if I remember correctly, there was blood on the cardboard.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking they pulled them in.
Gotcha. Then at the police precinct, Captain Bosch and his beat cops are being inundated with missing persons reports. Calls the chief of police, telling him that he can't keep a lid on this thing any longer. Chief of police says it's not his decision, and they have orders to keep their mouths shut, and Bosch will do the same. Bosch tells one of his cops to run a blotter on the local neighborhood. Additionally, he's getting hounded by a reporter named Murph looking for a scoop. Then he goes to interrogate an old woman that tried to steal a cop's gun. The photo shoot, George has a very unprofessional breakdown about the fact that Lauren is posing barely covered, all for the sake of a cheap perfume ad. One of the ad execs, also played by Patricia Richardson, the mom from Home Improvement.
Oh, shit.
Just who's who of people in this movie.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure, and I'll probably answer my own question, but they're probably all New York-based actors, I would imagine.
I would have no way of looking that up.
No, I know. I'm just saying, it was shot in New York. It was low budget. I'm assuming they weren't flying people in from Los Angeles.
Yeah, 100%. Then he calls his answering machine to check his messages. First, it's Derek calling him again on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Then a doctor calling for Lauren. I wonder what that means.
Yep.
And then a woman from the police station calling Bosch to tell him calling George to tell him that she's in jail and needs him to bail her out. Kids, you used to have to call your answering machine to get your voicemails.
Yeah.
That was a thing that happened.
And that was for rich people with answering machines. The rest had to wait until we got home to listen to the tape.
It's true. So he leaves in the middle of the shoot to go bail out this old woman. Back at the precinct, Bosch gets the report back from his officer that is all the missing persons reports. So he goes to talk to the Reverend Daniel Stern, who runs a homeless shelter and has made a number of these missing persons reports. Reverend tells him that all the homeless people that live in the sewers have not come to his shelter for 2 weeks, and it's becoming a pattern. All except one. Okay.
I was going to say, I did enjoy that the Reverend called and made all these reports and then got pissed when a cop got sent.
That's fair. Yeah.
Maybe I think they make the point that what cop was sent down, but it was funny. He was like, I make these reports and they send a captain. Like, what do you think when you report 12 people missing?
Sure. All except one guy, Val, who they go to talk to, but Val talks in riddles and then pulls a knife on Bosch.
Now we see where the Ultimate Warrior got some of his promo material from.
There you go. Back at the precinct, the George bails out the woman that called him, and he gets hassled by Sam McMurray, who's playing a cop here, as he usually does. He did in Stone Cold, which we covered last time.
Yep.
As George and the woman leave, they get tailed by a plainclothes cop, or I guess it wound up being the reporter. I don't even remember.
It was a cop.
It was a cop, right?
And he was very not obvious, like, to the reporter. Like, I'm too busy. These two people walk around the corner. I'm going to go that way too. You know, I'm not following or anything.
Why does he follow him? I don't even remember that.
The captain asked them to do it.
Gotcha.
Because of the after talking to Daniel Stern's character.
Mm.
and he sees him with the person, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because then when they go into the subway tunnels, that guy's like, Bosch go fuck himself, basically.
Yeah, I'm not gonna follow him down there.
Yeah.
I also thought his character was a little pointless. The newspaper writer.
Well, because he got 8.
I think that's the only reason he's in it, right? Because he's going to be a body, essentially.
Yeah.
But his storyline is kind of weak, I thought.
Yeah, it's like I don't. It's there's such a weird backstory with George of like not mattering at all of like what he's getting at. Is like you disappeared for months and then you came back as like a photographer or something like that.
Yeah,
and
there's a whole story missing.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's supposed to be some
trying to allude to.
Yeah, there's like he was alluding that there was like some sort of intrigue with what he's been doing with these homeless people. Yeah, it was just a reason to get them in. They had to figure out why George and this guy would go into the tunnel. Is essentially why.
Okay, that in that case, I think that makes a little bit more sense. I'd probably get rid of them. Just you stick to your 3 main characters.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of characters you could do that too in here. For me, the only thing that would, if he needs to be in it, the only thing I would change is that maybe make him a beat reporter instead of a freelance reporter. Because as long as I was in the business, I didn't know freelance people just hung at a police station to get stories. Like that sounds like that would be the guy that does the crime beat for the newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I do that.
I think you basically keep George, AJ, Captain Bosch, Lauren, but you kind of just you just have her be the girlfriend, though. You don't have to put her in danger necessarily. And then what's his name? The Wilson. Like those are the main people that you really focus on.
And you don't even need. I guess I don't know. I was going to say I don't even think you need her as a girlfriend. She could just be the model for when he gets that phone call.
Sure. Yeah.
You
don't need to have her pregnant because it lifts out of the story. And you can have a reason if you want to put a body count on this movie. You could basically have it where you don't have to have a freelance reporter. Yeah, it's just like cops. Just have them. And I'm not trying to be snarky, but cops are very involved in this movie. So just you start piling up some cops.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't do that till the end, which seems like with all these cops around, if they start picking off 1 or 2, it makes more sense than the only time it does happen.
I think, because I'm going to say here, you can drop the newspaper guy and you just give Sam McMurray's character, the officer, like you kind of give him that role where he's harassing George a little bit here and there. And then you have him be the one who gets chudded.
Yeah.
Because he probably has the same amount of lines as the newspaper reporter.
Probably. Pretty close.
So you could swap them out, I thought. That would be interesting.
Yeah. As George and the woman leave, they get tailed by a plainclothes cop. George follows the woman into the subway and into the tunnels. He asks her why she wanted a gun, and she says it's for Victor. Then she asks for some bandages. She takes him deep into the subway tunnels into Victor, who looks like he was attacked. Victor starts talking about real ugly fuckers that did this to him. George tries to attend to Victor's wounds, and he pulls a bandage off Victor's leg to reveal a large chunk of his leg has been chewed basically off. Meanwhile, Bosch heads back to Reverend's, and he starts asking about what George's connection is to homeless. Reverend starts getting antsy about all the questions from Bosch, and it turns out that the woman in the beginning walking the dog was Bosch's wife, and that's why he's taking this missing persons thing so seriously.
That was when I had the sort of partial aha, and then at the end, when I saw her face, I was like, oh, yes.
Gotcha. The Reverend tells Bosch what he knows about George, which isn't much, and then Reverend starts talking about an EPA probe that's going on in the subway system. Says that it's been going on for 4 weeks, but the EPA says they stopped probing a week ago. Brings Bosch down to the sewer tunnels, and along the way they find an assorted equipment that must have been from the EPA probe, like a Geiger counter, and a boot, and stuff like that. Then they hear a noise that does not sound human. George comes home and Lauren tells him she's pregnant. Surprise! And they have an awkward talk about if they want to have the kid, and they agree that they do want it.
Yeah, it's kind of, to be honest, it's a, not that the movie should be any kind of thing, but it's one of the first, like, I guess you could say maybe real kind of conversations about abortion without actually saying it, calling it the alternative. here, and where he's like, no, I just want, I want you to make the choice, not me. Like, just having that kind of conversation, at least for that time period, seems a little more progressive than a movie named C.H.U.D should be.
Right.
Or needs to be, I should say, not should be.
Yeah. Afterwards, George and Lauren are enjoying a post-coital ducking of Derek once again, who calls on the phone. Then outside, Grandpa gets attacked by C.H.U.D while his granddaughter watches as he tries to make a phone call from a phone booth. The next morning, Bosch goes to the precinct and the little girl is there. Sam McMurray is laughing his head off about the story this girl is telling about her grandpa being eaten by a monster from the sewer. Bosch starts putting some men in motion. Yeah. A-cab, baby.
Yeah.
Bosch starts putting some men in motion, placing more cops in the area of the missing persons, and putting out an APB for his wife. He gets on the phone with the chief and tells him that he's going to blow the lid off of the National Radiation Commission cover-up to let the commissioner know. Bosch then grabs the Reverend, and they head to George's apartment to try and find some evidence of creatures in the tunnels. But George isn't home, so the Reverend picks the lock, and they walk in and take a look at some of his photos. Bosch and the Reverend have a sit-down with the chief of police and the head of the NRC. Bosch says that he believes the missing people have been murdered and that has been something to do with the probe. And the officials, including Wilson from the NRC, hand-wave most of this evidence that they have, but then they show the pictures they stole from George, passing them off as the Reverend's. And all of a sudden, everyone is willing to talk. In Central Park, George and Lauren are arguing over whether they'd raise the kid in the city or the suburbs, and then Murphy, the reporter, interrupts to start hounding George for a story. Apparently, Murphy thinks there's a story behind George's photos of the people that live in the sewer. But then, meanwhile, the NRC chairman admits that there's currently radioactive materials in the sewers. There was a plan to move radioactive materials through New York City, but then the move got tied up in the courts. Now the material is just sitting in the sewers waiting for court movement.
That's what I wanted to talk about at the beginning. I completely forgot about it.
Mm-hmm.
Everything underneath the city right now in that area in Soho is radioactive material.
Mm-hmm.
Daniel Stern, John Hurd, and what's the officer's name? Captain Bosch. They walk through that tunnel system several times without any protective gear. Would they not? They would have died immediately. Would they not have?
I don't know about immediately, but the CHUDs are super radioactive, though. So being in contact with a CHUD would probably kill you immediately.
Exactly, and like literally walking through radioactive sludge. In the third act. I mean, they have the scene where Bosch and AJ go through, like they start their journey through the sewer system, and they find the Geiger counter.
Yes.
And it goes hot, like almost immediately it goes red. Like right there and then you're suffering major radiation poisoning.
Yeah, that's because of the CHUD. The CHUD's radioactive.
Right. And they must have been close to it then.
Yeah. I think they said that's something below them or something.
Okay, so then that might make more sense, because if they were anywhere near something that hot, I'd imagine that they would feel sick, right?
Yeah. Well, you never know what happens in Bud the Chud. Maybe there's a whole like court case about people having radioactive, ill effects of the radiation.
And Bud is suing the city of New York. That's what it is. Yeah. It's a court drama.
It's a court drama starring a CHUD
named Bud, who's like super articulate for some reason.
It's like the Insider. Michael Mann's the Insider.
I could just see the scene now where
Bud the Chud's the whistleblower.
Yeah. I just like Bud the Chud is on the witness stand, being like cross-contaminated. Or not cross-examined. Or is he defending himself and he's asking the questions to the NRC guy Wilson?
Yeah.
I'm no fancy lawyer, man. I'm just a cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller.
But it seems to me
you signed an affidavit, sir, clearly stating just like this whole super serious court drama with a CHUD, and I would go see that movie.
Oh yeah, I'd see it twice.
That's Oscar bait right there, if you ask me.
Who would play Bud the Chud?
It would have to be the voice, right?
Yeah,
Chris Pratt. And I'm not even kidding on that.
Oh, what a timely thing.
I know he gets picked for a lot of things, but I feel like Chris Pratt could do a good Chud.
I was more making a reference and time stamping this episode more as today is
Mario.
the day. Today is the day we'll get to hear Chris Pratt's Mario voice.
Yeah, I'm not even being sarcastic in it. I think he would be.
Is it more that he's a chud?
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I feel as if his voice, he could do a voiceover for a chud.
Okay. I would pick Daniel Craig as his character in Knives Out, doing that same accent.
The gentleman sleuth.
Yeah.
I like it. That's good.
Mark, who you picking? Who's the voice of Bud the Chud, the courtroom drama?
I had someone in mind. Hold on.
Joe Pesci.
Yeah, let's go with Danny DeVito.
Who you calling the Chud? There's no other Chuds here. You must be talking. I like that. Those are pretty good. Danny DeVito would be good.
The two.
You go with Joe Pesci because he'll have to talk about Daniel Stern's character.
Oh, you also have the My Cousin Vinny connection. The two
Yeah.
The two chuds.
Chuds. What's a chud? So we have to CGI in Fred Gwynn, right? Because he's dead.
Yeah.
So we CGI in him with the Uncanny Valley.
Yeah.
We have Joe Pesci as the Chud lawyer. And he's interrogating, I guess, Wilson.
Yeah.
And Fred Gwynn is the judge still. So
Are
you sure about that?
You sure about those 5 minutes?
I guess. Yeah, for some reason Wilson is now Southern.
Guess I'm just a fast cook.
You sure about that contaminated sludge? You sure about that? He's taking the pictures, like, go ahead, just spit it out. If you know it, you know what it is. Come on.
Meanwhile, the NRC chairman admits that there's currently radioactive material. Eventually, it comes out that the NRC is covering up the presence of a CHUD, cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers. But one has been found dead. So they go to the site and they find out that the CHUD was killed by asphyxiation from a gas leak. And the NRC's chair says that it's over. Bosch says he wants to send cops armed with flamethrowers into the sewers to clear it out, but the NRC chair is running the show now, and he says not a chance. But then Bosch sends them down anyway to meet up with the cleanup team that the NRC chair Wilson is sending down. The team from the NRC records as they go down into the sewers. As the Geiger counter starts going haywire, the cops turn on their flamethrowers and start lighting the place up. Some chud noises can be heard before the video cuts out. Back at the commissioner's office, they try to urge Wilson to go public, but he says that he won't do it until the autopsy is over. George starts considering Murphy's proposal to do a story on George. Then George realizes that his photographs are gone. So he thinks it's Murphy that stole them. So he calls him and tells him he wants his pictures back. Meanwhile, the Reverend...
I guess that would make sense. At first, I was thinking, why would he even consider him? But if that guy knew all about his life, I guess that would be the first person I would think if things were missing from my apartment. I didn't get that while watching the movie.
Yeah, I think, this guy has such a hard-on for him and his pictures that would be the first person I would assume. I would be like, oh, some random homeless guy that runs the homeless shelter and a cop I've never met broke into my house because they've uncovering a conspiracy and needed the pictures as evidence.
Yeah, no. Obviously, nobody would think of that.
Because George, up until this point, really hasn't met any of our other main characters.
No.
Right. Yeah, he hasn't met the cop.
Right. In passing. Like, he's been in the police station, but he hasn't, had a formal meeting with him.
Right.
Yeah. Murphy and George meet, and Murphy tells George he doesn't have his pictures. The cops have the pictures because it's a conspiracy. He wants George to take him down into the sewers. Meanwhile, Bosch tells the Reverend about the chuds and says that Wilson wants gas the sewers to get rid of them. And right on cue, Wilson wants to do just that. The Reverend is cooking on his stove when the pilot light goes out, so he goes down to the sewer to try and clear out who he can. Tells Val to leave, but as Val goes, one of Wilson's goons shuts the sewer grate and padlocks it shut, trapping the Reverend in the sewer and killing Val, who got knocked off the ladder. Val does not have a high constitution. Just got knocked the fuck out and dead. Meanwhile,
he's also Val is someone who's been in a bunch of movies before, has he not? He looks very familiar.
I don't know.
I looked it up before. Val, Graham Beckel.
Graham Beckel does not ring a bell.
Yeah, same.
He was in Pearl Harbor, L.A. Confidential, Leaving Las Vegas. He's been in a few things.
Gotcha. Yeah, I don't know him.
Yeah, when he came on, I was like, man, that guy, he has that face. I know I've seen him in something else.
Oh, yeah. I've seen this guy, but he
Right.
did not look familiar to me in this movie.
He's definitely that's the guy. He's one of those guys.
Yeah. This movie is filled with those guys.
Yep.
I'm trying to think of where I would have known him from because I've seen him before, but it's also like I have no idea. None of these things I have seen recent enough to be like, oh yeah, I know that guy.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm going through the IMDb and I see Pearl Harbor in '01, but after that, I haven't seen him in anything in forever.
He's in a lot of stuff, but
yeah,
I just don't know. I just don't know. Maybe it's is it Blue Streak? Maybe that's the Martin Lawrence movie. I think that might be where I know him from.
I was just talking about that movie like 2 days ago with some friends. Malone, the best in the business. Yeah, I don't know what else I could have seen him in. Oh, Brother? No. Yeah, I don't know. Escape Plan? Have I seen Escape Plan? What is Escape Plan?
I feel like that's a movie with Sylvester Stallone.
Oh, okay. Yes, okay. Sicario. Yeah, I don't know, but I've seen that guy. I know I've seen him.
Yep. Meanwhile, George watches as Murphy gets taken by a chud in the sewers. Reverend tries to find an alternate way out of the sewers, winds up coming across a chud ritual, and then accidentally makes some noises that alerts the chuds, and a chase ensues. Meanwhile, Lauren finds an entrance to the sewer in the apartment, and as she goes down there because she dropped her book, she finds Bosch's dog hanging dead. Bosch goes through the report of a dead body, and it winds up being his wife's head washed up on shore. So not a dead body, but a head, a dead head.
Part of a body.
Yeah. Bosch goes to the bar with a couple of beat cops, and they try to take him home, and he talks about how his wife was going back to school to be a teacher.
That monologue was almost a really good monologue.
Mm-hmm.
It cuts off like it's almost like he wasn't finished with the monologue, and it just kind of goes to the next scene.
Yeah,
he's like, yeah, she wanted to be a teacher. She would just stay up studying all night, and then boom, next scene. Like, what I need closure for that anecdote.
Yeah. I think the last line is like something about, and then she'd go and walk the dog.
Okay, so that's what caused her to die, right? She was walking the dog at the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right, now it makes more sense.
Yeah. Lauren calls the police to report the dog in the basement, then goes to take a shower. And the shower starts to clog, so she tries to fish a hanger into the drain, but then blood starts spraying everywhere. Meanwhile, chuds start coming up from the sewers. And John Goodman and Jay Thomas, both playing cops, walk into a diner to eat and harass a waitress. And chuds start breaking through the windows, and a chud comes up from the basement in the apartment building. On the street level, cops have blocked off the street where the diner is as scientists start checking out the scene from the sewer. Wilson starts ordering his men to start opening gas mains. Meanwhile, George is trying to make his way through the sewers with a gun that Murphy dropped. Comes upon Victor and his buddy Hugo, and Hugo has been feasted on. Victor pops up from the corner as he starts to turn into a chud. George winds up shooting him, and then the old woman comes by and knocks George out on the head and takes the gun. She plans to shoot him because he killed Victor, her brother, but then the Reverend comes up behind her and knocks her out. I guess she's dead too, right? She dies eventually because the gas main explodes.
Yeah, but I don't think Daniel Stern kills her.
No. I think he just knocks her out.
Yeah, he just kind of gingerly pushes her over. Because I guess he realized, oh, she's an older woman. I'm not going to come in and shove her.
Yeah. He pushes her right out of the movie.
right. Yeah. And she just goes off screen, and that's the last we see of her.
On the street level, Bosch yells at Wilson for the blood that's on his hands, including Bosch's wife. Wilson plans to shut down the subway and the power so they could gas the sewer system and has blocked off all the manhole covers. Lauren watches this news get reported on the news and freaks out, knowing George is down there with Murphy. She goes to leave and try to get him out, and a chud is walking up the steps of the apartment building. So she runs back into the apartment and starts barricading herself in. Down in the sewers, Reverend and George try to get above ground, but every manhole cover they come to is blocked. Cops finally show up in the apartment regarding the dog, and they immediately get killed by the chud.
Reverend I like how the chud are able to devise booby traps pretty much. Like they can devise plans and sneak up on other people. They're not just brainless monsters, apparently.
Mm-hmm. And Reverend and George make it to the dumping ground of toxic waste, which looks like it's been dumped for years, and something seems fishy. Wilson then gives the order to start pumping the gas. Reverend and George come upon the place where the camera crew and the cops were killed, and it's absolute massacre. Just bodies just torn in half, basically. They find a camera that is working and a headset off of a decapitated guy. They start broadcasting to the NRC truck to get a message out to Bosch. Meanwhile, the C.H.U.D breaks into the apartment and Lauren has to defend herself by hiding, throwing developer fluid on it, and then finally chopping its head off with a machete. Bosch then gets a hold of Reverend and George and tells them to meet him at a specific manhole cover and he'll get it opened for them. Lauren takes the cop car with the dead cops and heads to the police line. Meanwhile, Bosch confronts Wilson about what's really going on. That C.H.U.D doesn't really stand for cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers. It stands for contamination hazard urban disposal. Basically, they're just dumping shit in the sewers. Bosch threatens to go to the press about it if he doesn't let him open up the manhole cover. So Wilson pulls a gun on him and threatens to shoot him. They fight, and Bosch takes the keys to the truck that's blocking the manhole cover and moves it. But when he goes to lift the manhole cover, Wilson just shoots him right in the back. Wilson gets in the truck to try and put it back over the manhole cover, but Reverend and George manage to lift the cover and climb out before he's able to turn the truck around. So then he just tries to run them over. Lauren shows up and manages to shout at George and Reverend to get out of the way as Wilson tries to run them over. Wilson misses, then turns the truck around to try and hit them again. But Reverend then takes the gun and shoots a few times, eventually hitting Wilson in the chest. The van then rolls forward into the open manhole, and a spark ignites the gas from the sewer and explodes. Bosch tells Reverend, "Nice shot," dies, and George and Lauren embraces.
Yeah,
that is the end
He
of
dies?
C.H.U.D. I think he dies.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought that when because it looked like he was dead before, and then he says, "Oh, nice shot." I thought that meant he's going to live. But
I think they used the shot twice. That's what I was going to say, of him saying
Okay.
nice shot.
He does say "nice shot" twice. He says
Yeah.
"nice shot" off screen, and they're like, "Oh, he's there, still alive." And he says "nice shot," and then I think he dies.
I think that's when he dies. Or that would be my understanding.
it would have been nice if they did showed us that.
It's just everybody else is not super in a hurry to get him medical attention.
No, and no one's very bothered by him being shot.
Yeah.
Like,
He's
I
a-
guess
yeah.
it just happens sometimes.
He took I wanted to mention this. He takes the fact that his wife just up and disappears very well up until they find her body.
I think it's something that should have been mentioned earlier in the movie too, because it's the first thing that happens, and he kind of in one scene he kind of scoffs at the oh, we're supposed to put every cop in the city to try to find this missing person. He's very dismissive of it for someone whose wife is not is missing.
Yeah. But that's the end of C.H.U.D. A lot of fun, but yeah, I don't know. It's a good time. I would say.
I would have to agree. This was again, it was better than I remembered.
Well, usually here when we go through the plot, that's the end of the episode. But we try and a few things out, and we have a segment after this. So we're going to take a quick break, and you guys are going to listen to some ads, so we can pay those bills. We'll be back in a second. And welcome back. Now it's time for our final segment of the night. I don't have a name for it, but this will change from week to week. So we're going to do this one. So we were talking about C.H.U.D has a pretty impressive kind of ensemble cast of people that were before they were famous and stuff like that. So I wanted to put together a game for these guys. I have 5 movies here that I have picked through their cast list, basically 5 actors, and I'm going to go from basically 5th build down to 1st build, and you guys gotta figure out which movie this is. And
this isn't like a head-to-head thing, right? Like we can talk it out and be like, oh, what do you think, Mark? Or
it doesn't matter to me. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you want to do this, Mark? Do you want to tag team it, or do you want to go head-to-head?
Let's try co-op first,
Okay.
just so we can get a feel for the game.
Yeah.
and then we can see if it would be a fun competition. Just so it doesn't turn into the trivia thing we tried previously.
Right.
Another podcast.
And you're not really much of a horror fan.
No.
So it might be a good idea to tag team this one.
I will say that some of the movies I picked, so all these movies I picked are between the years of 1997 and 2010. And these are movies that I know Mark's not a horror fan, but there might be some of these that he may have seen based on people. I know how he picks movies sometimes when he watches. I'll just say that.
Yeah. I may get some of them based on just an actress.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So let's start with the first one. All right. So I'm going to go. The first one, the first actor on this list is Robert Patrick.
Okay.
No guesses?
Oh, The Faculty?
Faculty. Yep.
Okay.
There you go. The other people on that list was Elijah Wood, Josh Hartnett, Usher, and Jordana Brewster.
I would have got it with Hartnett.
Next one, Oliver Hudson.
I don't know that one.
What's the next one?
Lacey Chabert.
This one I don't know.
Yeah, get there. Just give me the next one. I should probably. My mind is saying I should get this on like before you get to the top 2 stars.
Okay. The next one is Katie Cassidy.
Oh boy, I'm struggling here. This one I'm not 100%.
This is just if you allow me one hint. This is a more recent one.
I don't even know who Oliver Hudson is, to be honest with you.
It's Kate Hudson's brother.
Okay.
This is the 21st century.
Okay.
21st century. I don't know. I don't know yet.
Okay, you want me to go to the next one?
Yeah, go to the next one. Yeah.
Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
Ooh, shoot.
I feel like it's right there for me, and I think this is the one you thought I would get.
Is this a remake?
It is a remake.
Is it Black Christmas?
It is Black Christmas.
Oh, all right. Mary Elizabeth Winstead. I remembered her being in the remake.
The last person would have been Michelle Trachtenberg.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't have got that. Okay. But I feel like I should have gotten that.
Mm-hmm.
What year was that, Ant?
2006.
Wow. Okay. For some reason, I thought it was more recent.
Next one, Robert Englund.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
It is.
Yeah. Okay. Robert Englund. Is it an anthology?
Nope.
Okay.
Next one, Tara Reid.
Sharknado?
Nope, it's not Sharknado.
What else was she in? And Mark, any guesses?
No.
Tara Reid.
Okay, I'll go to the third one.
Yeah.
Rebecca Gayheart.
This isn't like Jawbreaker, is it?
It is not. I thought about putting Jawbreaker on this.
Is that a horror?
It's a dark comedy.
I'll give one more guess before you go forward.
Okay.
Is it Urban Legend?
It is Urban Legend.
Oh, nice.
Yep. The next two were Alicia Witt and Jared Leto.
Well, Jared Leto would have got it for me immediately.
That was the last one.
Even though he doesn't remember making that movie.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have known that.
Yep.
I've never seen that movie.
And this is where Ant is right about one thing. I've watched a lot of Rebecca Gayheart movies in terms of for that reason of it's the same reason Anya Taylor-Joy now is like, oh, there's just something about her. I want to watch everything she's in. So that's why that was in my head.
There you go.
As soon as you got to her.
Okay.
And this was if my timeline's right, this is before Tara Reid went weird.
Yeah, this is 90s, I think.
Yeah. I think it's 98, 99. So.
Yeah. All right, next one. So we got two more left. First one is Patrick Warburton.
That's not a whom that I would know. That's a like I didn't realize he was in horror movies.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
All right, I'll go to the next one.
Yeah.
Lance Henriksen.
Oh, all right. So this has got to be something from like the 80s, I'm assuming.
Nope. I said, everything between.
Oh, yeah, you said 97 and 2010, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
This one, I'll say on the earlier side of that.
Okay, so early 2000s, I'm thinking.
Yep.
Go to the next one if Dan has a guess.
Okay. Scott Foley.
So that is Foley.
You would if you saw him.
Is he one of those guys?
Yeah. Well, I'm not there. Again,
I'm not there either yet.
Okay. These next two might give it away.
Okay.
So, the first one, Liev Schreiber.
Oh, hold on. Was this also a remake?
No.
Oh shit! All right. Oh, I'm thinking of Vince Vaughn in Psycho, the remake. That's why.
Oh, that would have been okay. And last one's gonna give it away. Nev Campbell.
Oh, I'm assuming it's. Oh no. It was Scream was that was in the 90s, right? Scream.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm trying to think which one it is.
Oh, it's a Scream, but not Scream.
Is it Scream 3?
It's Scream 3, isn't it?
It's Scream 3.
Yeah. The only reason is because is that the one with Patrick McDermott in it, or the
Patrick
Dreamy?
Patrick Dempsey. Yep. A lot of people in this one. Roger Corman's got a role.
You know what's the funny thing? You know what's the funny thing, Ant? If you would have put Patrick Dempsey in there, I may have gotten it sooner. And he's probably like 6th or 7th on the call sheet.
Jenny McCarthy, Parker Posey.
Yeah, just because I remember that, because this is the first one where it's like they're in college, right?
Second one's when they're in college. This one they're in Hollywood.
Hollywood, that's it.
I've never seen Scream 3, so.
Yeah.
The only one I haven't seen is 4.
Last one. All right. Idris Elba.
The Wire. No.
Yeah. Idris Elba.
I don't know, Dan. So.
No, I was going to say The Dark Tower, but that's not horror. I don't know. Not yet, at least.
Next one. Kellen Lutz.
Ugh, Kellen Lutz. Why I wouldn't have seen this movie.
All right, I go to the next one. Ming Na.
Is this a Twilight movie?
It is not a Twilight movie.
Okay, because I know Kellen Lutz is in Twilight.
Yes. Yeah.
They don't do that to me.
So got 2 more months. Not 2 more, 3 more, whatever months.
All right, next one. Scott Porter.
Okay, so this is probably the year of the 2010s.
Is this a remake as well?
It is a remake.
I know exactly what it is. Kellen Lutz he's a diner patron. It's the Nightmare on Elm Street remake.
It is not.
What? That's not Kellen Lutz in the diner?
That's not the movie I picked.
Oh, damn! I thought I had it. Because I think that came out in like 2008, 2009. The remake.
I think it's like 2009, 2010. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I remember it was either after college or during college.
Yep.
Yeah. So give us that top bill.
Last one, top build. Brittany Snow.
Oh, is this prom night?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, good job. I never saw that. I guess I didn't know Idris Elba was in that kind of horror movie.
Yeah, I didn't realize it either. And then when I saw his name in the cast, I'm like, oh, I'm picking this one as the 5th one.
Who's the next actress on that list? Do you have it like in front of you, or did you just pull those 5?
I just pulled those 5. Give me a second.
I feel there's another actress in this movie that was the reason I saw it.
Jessica Stroup?
Maybe, because that was right around Gossip Girl.
Oh.
Not Gossip, but not Gossip. I'm going to look it up.
Beverly Hills 90210?
Yeah.
There you go. Yep. She's also in The Hills of Eyes too. That's it. That's my game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
I like that game.
You guys did pretty well.
Yeah, not bad. Not too bad. Mark, you did really well.
Yeah. I'm if I've seen the movie, I'm pretty good with remembering faces and names.
Yeah.
I think it might be the 90210 remake came out right around this time.
Gotcha. And that's why I picked these movies all around the Mark going to see movies age.
Yes, and there was a Netflix thing where I just saw just about everything that came out that was in a certain wheelhouse.
Yeah.
I literally like a week ago watched The Faculty. That's why I was able to figure it out.
I haven't seen that in a while.
It's really good.
Yeah.
It was better than I thought it would be. It's essentially Invasion of the Body Snatchers in 1998.
That actually sounds terrible.
Oh, it was actually pretty good.
Just that last part when you said in
1998.
Well, has Jon Stewart.
It's got a great cast.
That's a phenomenal cast. Salma Hayek.
Famke Janssen.
Yep, she's in it. George's boss at one point is in it.
Mr. Kruger?
Yeah, Mr. Kruger's in it. Who else? Frasier's wife from Cheers.
Oh, Phoebe Newirth, yeah.
Yeah, she's in it. Who else? Oh, Shooter McGavin, Christopher McDonald. Yep. I think that's it. Usher's in it.
Usher, Elijah Wood, Josh Hartnett.
Yeah, it's weird. Usher is like top build. He's in the poster, and he's maybe in like 2 or 3 scenes. I guess he was what was hot on the streets.
Yeah. All right, that's our episode this week. We're still trying to figure some things out, but I think this week went pretty well. We'll have one maybe something different next week for our 3rd segment, but that's going to wrap us up this week. Check us out on all the socials. If you're listening to this, you know where to find us, but give us 5-star rating on your podcast catcher of choice. And yeah, that's all. We'll be back next week with another horror movie. We're doing horror movies all this month, and it'll culminate into our last episode this month, which will be our Twitter poll movie, which we'll announce, I think, next week. So be on the lookout for that. That's going to wrap us up. The director of C.H.U.D from 1984 is Douglas Cheek. So, for Dan Aquino and Mark Myers, this is Anthony Vecchio telling Douglas Cheek, well, you certainly made a movie, didn't you? Thanks for listening to They Called Us a Movie. Subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to check us out on Twitter and Instagram at TicTamPod. That's TCTAM Pod. You can also check us out on TikTok at They Called Us a Movie.